Welcome to the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast. I'm Brandon Jaffe. Join us as we explore relationship and mental health issues by weeding out the trends in the mental health industry to uncover what truly works in improving our emotional well-being and relationships. At Inspired Resolutions Counseling, we specialize in providing interventions and resources for families with teens, focusing on topics such as teen mental health, parenting challenges, and family dynamics.
This episode is a recording of the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens group. The voices of the participants have been edited out for confidentiality purposes.
But we're going to start with you tonight, if that's okay. Your story is huge because you don't have a lot of power. You don't have a lot of power, but and I'm assuming, just based on the little interaction, you don't feel like you have much hope. I want you to ask yourself, without having hope, what can you do? I'm not asking you to answer that. I just want you to ask yourself that as we talk. And I want everybody to ask themselves that right now. When I have no hope in my relationship or, in fixing this problem that has to do with mental health or the family, when I have no hope, what do I do? Because that's like the ultimate question for most parents. You've got a 10-year-old who won't speak to you. Do you mind sharing just kind of the background and what exactly you're going through with everybody? This situation is, heartbreaking. We've got so many people in this group, people who we serve, people we know in the community who are going through divorces. And to make rhyme or reason and figure out who's right or wrong is almost impossible, right? The person who's right is me, right? It's the me I always feel just. And sometimes, there's such a contrast to a really evil person and a really good person. But a lot of times it's like a combination of some stuff. And a lot of times there's somebody who's doing more wrong than one other person. But that whether you're the wrong person or you're the right person, when you're a parent, you love your child. When you are a together parent, right? You're not coming from a divorce situation. You love your child. And what's interesting is more and more I am seeing this situation, whether it be from a divorcing family or a together family, where there is a good parent, a bad parent, a parent that the child cuts off, a parent that the child doesn't cut off. Or both parents get cut off. This dynamic is terrible, right? And we can sit here and analyze the why of it for days. And so he is sitting here going, hey, I don't really know what I did, but I'm willing to go to anger management. I'm being told that there's this problem and I need to work on this. And it's not easy as a parent to work on yourself because you don't know, do I take the feedback from my child or don't I? Do I take the feedback from my partner or my ex-partner or don't I? Right? And we always feel like we have this information that nobody else has. And that makes it really difficult to navigate. What is it, me? Is it them? Is there something else going on? And trying to figure out the why becomes crazy making. And so you've got to stick with the facts. Right now, my child wants to cut me off, does not want to be in relationship with me. Now, for some reason, there are some therapists out there saying, respect that. Oh, heck no. Now, if you think you might have an anger management problem or you're being told anger is a problem, everybody can benefit from going to an anger management class, especially the one that I run on Tuesdays. If you're being told to work on yourself, you go work on yourself. But what you never accept is I'm going to participate or be okay with being cut off from my child. We don't accept that. We don't get belligerent in trying to repair it, though. And so I see some parents just give up and go, oh, wow, man, I was told just to respect that. And I don't know where that mindset came from. I've literally heard of therapists telling people in this whole child reunification process, hey, you need to respect that they don't want to be with you or have the time with you. You want to bet? That's not what the child reunification therapy research says. I can tell you that right now. Now, if you're an abusive person, you take care of that abusive nature. You take care of your flaws that are causing harm, and then you seek out the child when you're done doing that. Not done, when you've come far enough where you're not a danger. But you don't cut off contact. You let them know, I am working on myself, I love you. If they say, don't contact me, you do it less or in a way that's not as threatening. But you never give up. You never give up. You never allow your children to make the decision to cut you out of their lives. I've heard parents say, well, if they're not pursuing me, I'm done. I'm not going to pursue them. And that's not okay. But it does become this kind of balance, right? There are some nuances to my saying that. Now, you never stop pursuing them in healthy ways. And that might be once a week, once a month, I don't know. You always seek help. If you get to the point, whether it's your fault or not, that your kids want to cut you out of their lives, you need help. You cannot do this alone. And most likely if you're in a partnership, so you and your partner need to go seek help. How do we navigate this in a healthy way? I call it pursuing the relationship relentlessly. That's not pursue it dangerously. It's not pursue it in an angry way or a victimized way. It's very easy when you are the victim of your kids treating you poorly or cutting you off or the behavior of another parent to take on a victim mentality in that relationship. You take that damage to your own therapy. You pursue the relationship relentlessly but healthfully. Any thoughts? And I don't accept that new ideology, and it's a very new ideology. And here's the problem. There's something going on in society where we are calling things toxic that aren't toxic. We are calling things traumatic that aren't traumatic. There's a very large difference between a traumatic event and an adverse event. I don't care what a therapist says. You bang your toe and stub it and the nail pops off. That might be like somewhat traumatic for my 5-year-old because that's kind of gross, but it isn't traumatic for an adult. And if it is, you need help. You don't have a tolerance that is reasonable to live in this world. And I may sound like a jerk saying that, but if everything is called toxic and traumatic, there are some unhealthy behaviors that we all exhibit in our relationships. Doesn't make us toxic. Toxic used to be synonymous with what? Toxic used to be synonymous with abusive. We didn't say just toxic. It was in relationships, a lot of times when we were talking about toxic, what we were talking about a lot of times was addict behaviors. So if you're a parent who's an addict and you're pursuing your child relentlessly, you didn't hear me correctly. You're an addict. Do not pursue your child. You are most likely going to abuse them, and you're dangerous. In fact, I had a conversation like that many, many, many months ago with somebody who had heard my message at some point about pursuing relentlessly, and then I'm like peeling back the layers and talking to them, and I find out that like they're an addict. They're not only an addict, but they were an addict dating another addict, and there's some crazy things going on in terms of who they're living with and when. And they're like, but you told me to pursue my children. I'm like, no, I didn't. I sure did not. Now, I can't tell you if you're an addict. I can't tell you if you're abusive. I can't tell you what abuse you caused or participated in when your children were young. So I'm not going to go around saying, yeah, you should pursue. Because if you were abusive and you haven't made amends, or you're continuing to be abusive, then the reason you shouldn't pursue is because, yeah, you're toxic and dangerous. Do I think you should pursue if you've changed that behavior and you're ready to make amends? Yeah, pursue, but it might be lighter than another parent. I give this message because I don't think most parents are abusive. I think most parents have yelled when they shouldn't yell. I think most parents have probably, said some cruel and mean things in moments of anger, but that isn't abuse. But if you're abusive. So if you're abusive and you can't get back in line with your child in your child's life, first fix that abusive nature so that you don't continue to cause damage, because abusive people cannot stop being abusive, unless one of two things happen. Does anybody know the only two ways abusive people become three ways. There's three ways. Not abusive. These are the only ways that abusive people stop being abusive. Number one, because they just get too old to be abusive and they need help. Sometimes even that doesn't stop them. Number two, they get the help that they need. And number three, they die. Man, I can't tell you how many people, if they hear this, are going to be so mad that I say that. But it's true. It's 100% true. You see, having abusive moments is much different than a pattern of abuse. Sometimes through lack of understanding or cultural things right, you might have done some abusive things in a relationship, but that's different than a pattern of abuse and you having that type of personality, okay? Does that make sense, you guys? And so you know what, bud? Do what you can. Do not stop. Continue to participate in this group. I don't know how long it's going to take for your child to bring you back in, but you don't give up. And you get all the help you can, even if it's not your fault. Even if it's another outside force that is totally unfair, you still get the help. Continue. Pursuing and loving on them might not be the annoying text every day. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. It might be like a couple months go by and, hey, I wanted to let you know I'm getting help. I do love you. I've had parents say, yeah, I'm cut off. I can't get them. I can't do anything. But you see, the pursuit might not be that you have control over actually getting in contact with them. The only thing you can pursue sometimes in a season is getting the help that you need, becoming a better person, waiting for that moment that you have an opportunity. And then the next question I always get from people, yeah, but how long is it going to take? I don't know. I really don't know. But you don't give up. I appreciate you sharing your story with us. When your children cut you off, whether it's as drastic as I don't want to see you and we're in a divorce situation and I don't have to see you, or as annoying and disruptive as we live in the same house, you provide for me, you cook for me every day, and I'm just going to be a jerk to you and ignore you and go in my room no matter what you say. No matter what you're thinking, the narrative on the inside on a daily basis is going to change how you interact. And you might not notice it. That internal work is sometimes all you can work on for a season. And what are we changing? Attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And if you go through a really terrible, adverse situation relationally in your family or mental health wise, and you haven't changed any attitudes and you haven't changed any beliefs or behaviors, you haven't done any work. So a good gauge that you're doing the work is you go, man, I can think of some attitudes that have changed. Man, you know what? There's some behaviors that I've changed, I've added or taken away. And you know what? I'm not believing the same thing. I had this one belief here and now I've had to kind of change it a little bit. Any thoughts for him? Anybody have anything to give him hope or next thing to work on? That is important because, again, even in a family that's still together, sometimes somebody bows out, right? Well, the mom or the dad's taken care of because they get along better or they click better. No, that presence, and it's remember our hashtag is hashtag calm parenting is best. Your calm presence, even when things are going awry. Both parents being able to stay calm. And in a divorce situation, you might not be able to get the other person to change and become a good person. But you always want, remember I said attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. You always want the attitude of, I want my child to have both parents, no matter what that looks like. And what we're doing is we want to help influence them to have healthy boundaries if they have a difficult parent in their life or an unhealthy parent in their life. We don't want to encourage them to not have that parent in their life. And that's a hard balance. So I'm going to stop there because there might be situations where the boundaries are, I have to protect myself. But again, that's abusive situations, that's addict situations. But outside of abuse and addict situations, all we're left with is maybe mean, maybe annoying, socially awkward, works too much, selfish, right? All that stuff, we still want them. We want those difficult parents in the child's life, but we want the child to learn to take care of themselves and set boundaries and be healthy in that relationship. Now, that's based on research, you guys. Research says that kids are better off when both parents are interactive and engaged and a part of that child's life. The only exception, again, is the abuse and addiction. So thank you very much for sharing your story. And does anybody else have any thoughts? The unspoken, when a relationship seems completely broken or chaotic, there's a lot that might be going on. Now, divorce can be worse than a death. In fact, these days I'd say most divorces are worse than a death. So you've got young children or maybe teens going through divorce, and they're trying to make sense of it all. You've got young teens, young children who are just trying to make it through life, who have maybe a parent who loses their job, or right. So a lot of times, I can't tell you guys how often there's other stuff going on that you can't put your finger on at the end. Kind of seems obvious, but if something as big as divorce is going on, you don't know how your children are going to grieve. You don't know what their response is going to be, and you don't know if they're going to be able to tie it. In fact, they probably won't be able to tie it to the right thing. Like he said, you don't know what good is coming out as you navigate this, even though you feel completely rejected. A lot of the seeds you plant as a parent, a lot of the things that become the crux of the amazing relationship by the time that they're how old? 30, are things that you didn't realize were actually happening and were being listened to. And you've really got to try to remember that as a nugget of hope, because you don't know what is going well during the chaos. You don't know what seeds you're planting. That's why we teach healthy relationship building here, not parenting tricks. That's why we don't get caught up in the CBT stuff as the focal point and the punishments and rewards as the focal point. We just teach how to be healthy in the long run on a consistent basis. Again, because sometimes when you don't realize there's any good going on, you might have just planted the most important seeds. You don't know when you're being rejected how much might be unspoken but acknowledged internally, right? Your kids don't even have a connected frontal lobe, which means they can't manage their emotions very well. And they don't understand their own feelings and thoughts. They can't make sense of half the world, if not 90% of the world. And then we're looking for proof instead of just, hey, they can't make sense of things. We're going to consistently be healthy, pursue relentlessly, never give up. When I imagine the prodigal son story in the Bible, I don't imagine a dad that just went, oh yeah, hey, go off and go ruin your life and squander everything. I imagine a dad who probably sent out some scouts, right? Because this man was a man of means. I have a feeling he had some sort of pulse on his son. And back then there was no texting, I love you. But I'll bet there were some expressions of love that were unspoken in this story. Because the dad, when he welcomed his son in after all those years, wasn't like completely shocked, wasn't, right? It was just an acceptance, as though that relationship for the father had never ended. And I feel like that's a piece of the story that's not being spoken about and so I want you guys to think about that. Even if it's just internally, your relationship with your child never stops. You never lose that hope. That is your duty. Sorry. And what do we call the relationship again? Is it a two-way relationship? It is a one-way. It is a legacy relationship. And that is so hard for parents. I just today had a parent absolutely, completely, and totally furious with me for using that term. Couldn't wrap their head around it. Nope. It's two-way street. I'm not going to give if they're not going to give. I'm telling you right now, you are not going to be successful as a parent if you think of it as a two-way street. I'm not saying don't have boundaries. I'm not saying like just give and let them walk all over you. That's why we also talk about boundaries. We also talk about all healthy size relationships. But the mentality, the attitude is, I know this is a legacy relationship. I know I am passing down for their future. I know that I can't expect that instant relationship back. Did you guys have that mentality of we're going to do this and see if we get back from him what we want? Or was it we're going to do what's healthy for him, we love him, got to let it go? When we have a mentality of this is an equal relationship, I need reciprocation soon, or I'll give them a year to give me reciprocation, what happens is you build something in you that becomes actually toxic, that makes it more likely that you act in abusive and unhealthy ways. Does anybody know what builds inside you? Resentment. It is your job not to resent your children. Now, I'm going to give you guys all a guarantee in life right now, okay? Everybody listen, everybody suck it up, everybody swallow it and get over it tonight and leave this at the door. Every one of you is going to experience resentment from your child. And sometimes you're going to be like, why, are you kidding me? Some of it might not come out until after 30. But if you are healthy in your end of the relationship, they will get the opportunity to work on their resentments. They will find an opportunity, if they have children, to have aha moments and respect and love you for the relationship that you protected all these years unconditionally. That's the other thing. Their love for you might not be unconditional. Sorry, it's true. Their love for you might not be unconditional during seasons. It is your job to love them and love on them unconditionally and consistently. Anybody else have thoughts? What's interesting is it feels like a two-way relationship because of your attitude, because of your beliefs about the relationship, because of your behaviors in the relationship. And that's the unspoken truth that I don't know how to explain to somebody who hasn't experienced it yet. It's like there's this other concept I teach. You can't seek fairness, justice, and equality. And when you don't seek fairness, justice, and equality in a relationship, you experience more fairness, justice, and equality. Well, when you don't seek the two-way reciprocal relationship, you are more likely to experience a reciprocal relationship with your child. When you're looking for it, though, you will not experience it. Guarantee it. I am very good friends with my parents, and there is no way it is a reciprocal relationship. I would do anything for them. I hang out with them all the time. I just went to the river 2 weekends in a row with them, right? I love hanging out with them, and that's a lot of my friends don't like hanging out with their parents. It's still not a reciprocal relationship. There's so much more coming down to me than I could ever give to them, and that's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. Welcome to group. It's so good to have you here. Do you mind sharing with us what brought you to group and what you're looking for help with? Sure. No, I love what you're sharing right now, and I'm so glad to have you in group. And it's going to seem like I'm jumping around, okay? First, I'm going to make a really crude, maybe even rude comment, okay? As nice as your ex might be, when you get divorced, for you to depend on their follow through to hold a boundary is absolute insanity. If you're I'm going to repeat myself. If you're depending on your ex in order to maintain boundaries, that's insanity. They either divorced you for a reason or you divorced them for a reason. But what you can't do is depend on your ex in order to maintain a boundary. Now, I'm going to speak further on that. Because if I need to depend on anybody else for my boundaries, I don't have a healthy boundary. He used the magic word. Does anybody know what that is? Punishment. He's got this situation, happened many years ago, but we think of a punishment, and the punishment doesn't work. I'm cool with punishments until they stop working. I'm cool with rewards until they stop working. Man, My daughter is awesome. She's 5 years old. She's cute as heck. She totally can get one of. She got me to let her pick out 5 bags of candy on the way home from the river on Sunday. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. 5 bags of candy. And you want to know why I got her 5 bags of candy? I got her 5 bags of candy because I really wanted her to let me full throttle the jet ski because I want her to face her fears. I said, I will let you pick out 5 pieces of candy when we go home if I can do full throttle and I can jump 3 waves. And she started crying, said, but I'm scared. I said, then you don't get the candy. She said, okay, then do it. And we went 55 miles an hour on a jet ski, and we jumped it 3 times, and she was laughing. And then she misunderstood, came back with 5 bags of candy, and I'm cool with that because my reward worked. Why do I know it worked? Because she wanted to go on a second jet ski ride, and I got to jump as many times as I want, and I did a power slide. Okay? Now, I tell you guys that because I want everybody to really remember that story. I'm cool with punishment. I'm cool with reward. Unless it stops working. And once it stops working, you eliminate it from your parenting. You don't keep going back to it. Reward and punishment work until they stop working, and then they never work again. And then you've got to rely on healthy boundaries. That's really important, you guys. Now, you got 4 kids. Congratulations. That's amazing. I love that you're a Rosary and Servite guy. I went there. Man, I am the reason Servite has some rules there. My friends are the reason they have the other half of the rules that they have for their teens there. And we all turned out okay. I just was texting with one of my best friends from there. He was the one my parents almost told me not to hang out with anymore. And he is one of the youngest appointed judges in LA. So we turned out okay. But you've got a couple of things going on here. Number 1, I'm the disciplinarian. That happens in divorce situations, and that happens in together situations. Anytime I hear a parent saying, I'm the disciplinarian, and I know therapists say that to parents all the time, you can't be the disciplinarian, you can't be the only disciplinarian. And I've had parents who have gone through like the 5 love languages of teens, then gone to a therapist who tried to make it even, like, okay, you guys come up with the punishments together, then you say the punishments, and then at the end of the day, the kid's like, I know that she doesn't care or he doesn't care. This is all your fault. You can't get away from the nature of I want to do the parenting and this person's more lax. What you can change, though, is staying calm and having boundaries instead of long, drawn-out conversations. I don't have to speak to follow through with my boundaries. I don't have to get angry and show my anger just because I'm unhappy with my child. I have never told a single parent, stop the disciplining, put it onto them. You've been told that before. I want you to get your pen out. I want you to write this down. Because I tell parents something a lot different. I tell parents, stop talking. Shut your mouth. Be quiet. But I got to parent them. No, you don't. You sure don't. If you have healthy boundaries, you don't need to speak so much. By the time they're a teen, by the time they're going to Servite, you've already taught them half the morals, values, and things that you think. They don't need you to talk and talk and talk. And then the school's taking care of the rest of the morals and values. You set the boundaries, you follow through without speaking. And you can only set the boundaries that you control. I cannot set a boundary if I can't control the follow through. Therefore, if I have a spouse or an ex-spouse who's going to not follow through with taking away electronics if the electronics are being abused and misused, then guess what? I have to admit I cannot set a boundary. Now, I sound like a disciplinarian when I can't resolve and grieve and let go of the things that I cannot change, the things that I cannot control. It is unhealthy to continue to nag and yell and plea and explain yourself because you're trying to get your child to change. Figure out the things you control, set boundaries and follow through without speaking, and you will remove yourself from being seen as the quote-unquote disciplinarian. It's not that you're the disciplinarian. It's that you are the one they experience an adverse relationship with. I've known many parents who are the ones who follow through with boundaries while the other one doesn't follow through with boundaries, but they are the one that is sought out because as they're setting the boundaries, they're still pleasant and loving. It's usually the nagger, the loud one, the one who expresses the frustration and anger constantly that is rejected, not the one who follows through with boundaries. What's that like to hear, you guys? So you said that she is mad at you because you told her to come back and clean up her mess. And I was just curious, do you mind modeling for us what that or describing to us what that conversation looked like? And I love what he did. He set a boundary. He didn't get angry about it. I want you to clean your mess up. Here's the conditions with which I will provide a resource money for college. I can't tell you how many parents ruin the relationship because they try again, right? Okay, let's try again this semester, but this is it. Okay, but this is it. Okay, one more time. I can't believe, right? And then parents feel resentful because they keep giving chance after chance instead of just, hey, these are the conditions with which I will pay for college. Here's how much money I'm willing to give. Or I'm willing to reimburse you for college if you are somebody worried about your child going off to college, you can't stop them from going to college. You kind of can because you got to sign the FAFSA forms. But really, you can't stop it. But you can decide what resources you're going to give without resentment and under what conditions. What are the boundaries for the resources I'm giving for college? And that attitude cannot be met with threats or anger or resentment. If you're disappointed, that's your problem. That is yours to contend with. That is yours to navigate. If you resent them because of your disappointment, that's your fault. Be disappointed in them. Some of your children are not going to do what you want. They are going to fail miserably many times in life. They're going to continue to fail and then hopefully succeed sometimes. What happens is parents get too wrapped up in walking the road, the journey for them, instead of I provide resources, I love on them, I'm walking beside them, even in college that you're paying for. You're the one who decided to pay for it. Now, I love his attitude, right? Hey, it's her mess to clean up. I stayed cool, calm, and collected. She got all D's, even when she lied to me about it. Hey, I am willing to give you funds under these conditions. Otherwise, I'm not willing to give it to you. Now, if you know you're not going to set boundaries with funds for college, will you please just be quiet, give your child the money, and not ruin the relationship over it? Let them know if you're going to fail or you're messing up, I'm willing to give you the tutor and everything else, and here's the money for this college, okay? I don't know if some of your children belong in college. I can't tell you how often I run into children who went to college because of their parents, not because they belonged there, not because they wanted it. And then the parents' response is, yeah, but they're too young, they don't know what they want. Well, by the time they're in college, I'm sorry, but they need to be making choices regarding their own journey. And they are going to suffer the consequences of those choices, and that is just too bad. We live in a really weird time in history. For the first time, for some reason, our adult children are not responsible for their lives. And the resentment I see in parents who deny that they have resentment is actually a bigger tragedy than the mistakes that the 18, 19, and 20-year-olds are making. Here's a truth that I don't think many parents really get. Okay? Not too long ago, like my parents and then my parents' parents, if they messed up at 18, they only had a handful of years left. Your children messing up at 18, they've got like 3 times the amount of time to make up for it, figure it out, learn from it, and make great successes of themselves. And sometimes your insistence, your pressure, your damaging the relationship is the reason they don't learn the lessons that they need to learn. That's what you're responsible for, is balancing out, walking alongside them, loving on them while allowing them to fail. And I say allowing them to fail tongue-in-cheek because you're not allowing them to fail. It's not enabling them while they fail. Nobody is more successful because their parents enabled them while they made decisions that were going to result in failures. There is nobody who has made their success, honestly, who is going, yeah, you know what, I'm actually at the top because my parents, they enabled the heck out of me. They never let me fail. They totally fixed it in college. They totally fixed it in high school. And that's why I'm successful. But man, do you know how many people are at the top, CEOs, going, yeah, the lessons I learned to get here, let me tell you. I failed history a rock the first year of college. I have bankrupted 2 businesses. I have had more relationship failures and failures than I can count. I've had a lot of support from my parents. I've had a lot of resources that they were willing to give me with conditions. Man, I'm a lucky man for the resources I've been given. But without my failures, and I continue to fail all the time. You guys do too, by the way. I'm looking around at a whole bunch of people who are successful in parenting because you failed at some parenting at one point. I'm looking around at a whole bunch of people who are successful in jobs and careers and businesses that you own because of all your failures. But isn't it interesting? It is adversity and failure that we learn the most. However, that's the experience that parents refuse to walk alongside. It's the thing that you yell at your children for. It is the thing that happens that leads to you behaving in a way that damages the relationship with your kids. Isn't it mind-blowing? If I ask the average person in America, hey, is adversity good? Yes. Is failing good? Absolutely. So why are you flipping out at your child who just failed out of college? Why are you more concerned with making sure that they know how angry you are rather than buying them a grieving dinner because they've got some tough times ahead of them? Why are you the one picking up the pieces, making the phone calls, hiring the therapist, instead of, hey, here's some suggestions. I love you. I believe in you. I love using sports as a picture for this. But there's a big difference between allowing your child to lose a basketball game at Servite and walking alongside them and walking alongside them as they kick you out of Servite. There's a big difference between being cool with getting last place and saying, hey, you suck, but you're still a good person and you're making such bad decisions. You just got caught doing weed in the bathroom and you're running with the wrong crowd. And then it becomes this balance of how much am I allowing? Well, there's a lot that you can't allow or disallow as a parent by the time they're teens. How much am I going to allow my anger to overshadow the relationship with my child as they are making terrible decisions and really embarrassing me? You know how many parents aren't admitting that it's not just that they want the best for their child, they don't want to be embarrassed, they don't want to be humiliated. You had children, you're going to be embarrassed, you're going to be humiliated. I don't know to what extent, but that's just, like you said, their journey isn't about you anymore. Welcome to group. Do you mind sharing with us what brought you and what you're looking for help with? The scenario is you've got a child, you're afraid to set boundaries because either they cut or they're so depressed that they've attempted suicide or they've threatened to commit suicide, or I've even had it where kids will threaten to cause complete and utter chaos in the home if you parent at all. And that fear of, I can't parent because I'm afraid. Raise your hand if you can identify with that. You see how many hands went up? That is like, oh man, that idea of if I parent, my child will harm themselves or me or the home or do something that makes it not worth it to parent is like paralyzing. It's one of those things where I don't have a quick fix for you, but what I can tell you is we never parent from fear. We never, ever, 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 ever parent from fear. Now, when we're setting boundaries, we've got to ask ourselves, number one, what is this boundary what am I trying to protect? And it's not, I'm trying to protect my child. What am I trying to protect the morals and values in my home? Am I trying to protect what I participate in? Am I trying to protect my self-confidence? Am I trying to protect my money? Am I trying to protect my other children in the home? Right? So we've got to ask ourselves, well, why am I setting this boundary? Now, all boundaries are about protection. They are not about changing your child. That message gets so misconstrued and is so hard for people to hear that I've literally had people, once I say that, never come back to group again, not want to work with us again. Because a lot of places, people, therapists, professionals are following common sense instead of what an actual boundary is. For some reason, most people out there are teaching boundaries as a thing that you want out of respect for yourself. You can't force somebody to respect you. You can respect yourself. I had somebody tell me the other day, I was working with this therapist and they told me to set boundaries, and I'm not really good at setting boundaries because I couldn't get my partner to follow my boundaries. It was interesting because those boundaries were, don't cheat on me. And so this person had been in this battle of, I'm trying to get them to respect my boundaries. They say they will, and then they don't. And I'm like, you never set a boundary. Yeah, I did. I let them know that I didn't want them to cheat on me. What? Boundaries, and then I have parents say that all the time. I keep telling my kids what the boundaries are, and they don't follow them, and I take their stuff away, and then they go get other phones, or they go do this. You haven't set a boundary. Boundaries aren't that thing that you want that person to do. Boundaries are about protection. I don't want to participate in you going to a concert that I think is unhealthy for your mental health. Hey, I can set a boundary on that. I'm not going to give permission for you to do anything that I think is unhealthy for you. Now, that doesn't mean that my child's not going to go do that thing. That means that my boundary was, I'm not going to participate in it and give you permission. Well, a part of healthy boundary setting is figuring out what you actually control. Because what I call follow through, not consequence, follow through. I don't talk about consequences. There may be consequences to your boundaries. There may not be consequences to your boundary. The follow through has to be something that you control. I control giving you access to my car. I control giving you permission. I control giving you money. I'm not going to give you money. I'm going to hold on to the keys, and I'm not going to give you permission to go to the concert. And then my child still went to the concert. Well, I may not have stopped them from going to the concert, but I planted some seeds. This is something that I'm not going to participate in. Now I've got to ask myself, why? What am I protecting? When I set a boundary, it is so important that I know why I'm setting that boundary, not why, and the why can't be, I want my child to turn out a certain way, I think it's bad for them. What am I protecting? I don't know what you're protecting when you stop your child from going to a concert. I don't agree with you going to a concert is much different than I'm going to not participate in this because I think this is bad for you. So when the thing that you are protecting are your morals and values, like I don't want to participate in something I think is wrong, you better be able to explain to me or somebody else, what are you talking about? Why? Right? Back in the 80s, why did parents not allow their children to go to concerts? And they still went. There was this really scary, mind-blowing belief that Satanists were going to kill people. There was like this panic in all the 80s in the United States about Satanists. What were they protecting? They were protecting Satan from coming into their home. If your child's going to a concert, really, and you're wanting to set a boundary on that, ask yourself why. I'm not saying don't set the boundary. Ask yourself why and what am I actually protecting? I can tell another story. I know somebody, I worked with a family who was not going to participate in their child going to, they weren't concerts, they were these music events, and they were, the real issue was that they were gang related. And their child going and coming back was bringing an element of gangs and drugs and guns into the home. And therefore, the boundary, this is way, way back before I was in private practice, But the boundary became, you go to this, it was a hip hop thing, these underground hip hop things, you're not coming back to our home. We're locking you out of the house. And the reason was the child was going to them, and again, bringing back gangs, bringing back drugs and people, and it was just not a healthy thing. Now that I understood. Now, I'm not saying that you should participate in something, but think about what a healthy boundary is. A healthy boundary is something that where you are protecting yourself. You control the follow-through. A follow-through, in this case, might be, I'm not giving you my keys to participate in this thing that I disagree with. I'm cool with that. I don't have to be angry at that. It's not expecting them to change, being willing to be consistent. But you see, the language is, I'm not participating in giving you permission. I'm not going to allow you to take our car. I'm not giving you money for these events. That's much different than running yourself ragged trying to figure out how to physically stop them when you can't physically stop anything. And the mindset is different, right? So I talk about the spirit of boundary setting, and I hope that you keep coming back, because I'd like to actually pick up with you next week, because I want to keep talking about this boundary thing. How many people want to work on boundaries next week? I want you to think of the mindset first. When I'm setting healthy boundaries, I am in the spirit of setting boundaries. I might not know exactly what the boundary is going to be, but the spirit needs to be, I am coming from a place of protecting myself, my finances, my morals, my values, my home. That's got to be the spirit. Then it's, well, what is the topic? What am I actually trying to protect? Then it's, what do I control that is relevant to the boundary that I'm trying to set? Am I actually willing to follow through? The boundary needs to be concrete, and the boundary, again, I'm repeating myself, needs to be relevant. If my boundary is, if you eat all the chocolate cake, I'm taking away your phone, that's not relevant. That's not something like, what? What does that do with anything? The boundary should have been, I'm not buying any more chocolate cake because you eat it all. That's relevant. I don't want to participate in your diabetes. I notice that you're on, the phone every night. And the nights that you're on your phone, you're not turning in your homework. I don't want to participate in giving you a phone. I'm not participating in paying for that. Now that is a boundary that's relevant, that you may or may not be willing to follow through with. You may or may not have control over. Let's do a boundary, kind of hard-hitting boundaries next week. Anybody benefit from healthy boundaries? You guys are the ones I'm going to need to help me convince those who struggle with boundaries that healthy boundaries don't give you immediate gratification. They give you long-term contentment. And I'm going to end the group on that. Healthy boundaries never give you instant gratification. They don't change the person that you're hoping will change. Healthy boundaries don't help you immediately. They create healthier relationships. They create better and healthier patterns in you, which result in contentment. Not that, Yahoo, look, they did what I asked them to do. Now, sometimes you get that and it feels good. But healthy boundaries create long-term contentment, not instant gratification because you changed the person that you love. All right, you guys. Well, thank you guys all for joining us tonight. Good night, you guys.
The Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast is an Inspired Resolutions production. Hosted by Brandon Jaffe. Edited and mixed by Natalie Atkinson. Music by Natalie and Sean Atkinson. Inspired Resolutions Counseling is based in Yorba Linda, California. Whether you're interested in joining our group, seeking therapy services, or exploring more of our resources, you can find us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Inspired Resolutions Counseling.